Okay. Hi everyone, how you going? Thanks for your time and appreciate you coming along to later than we normally do, our webinars. Today we've got Sue Isbell from Kelvin Grove State College. Just to give you a bit of background, we've been working with Sue and Kelvin Grove for the past year now, and some phenomenal work that Sue's doing in this space. And Sue just won a Gold Disruptor in the National Digital Disruptor Awards for ICT Teacher of the Year, so very well done on that one, Sue. But the reason we got Sue here today is I'm not too sure if you're all aware, but there's a new curriculum coming in shortly from K to 12 for next year, and focused around three key areas around design thinking, core skills. Oh God, sorry, Sue, that was terrible. I was thinking of what I did the report on then. That was just terrible. No, but the new curriculum is really focused on changing, I suppose, the skill sets and capabilities of our students. So right now, it's not around. We teach kids around Word, Excel, and what computing is. This one is more around how technology can play a part for future roles. And we're really excited to be working with Sue on this one. But on that note, I'm going to hand over to you, Sue, and let you do all the talking today. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ross, and thanks for coordinating the webinar today. I will start by saying I'm not a Zoom expert, so I'm finding my way with this particular one, but I'm sure we'll be fine. So I've just added a bit of a snapshot on that first screen, but now my slides don't want to progress like they did a minute ago. There we go. So really it is, sharing my personal experiences. I hate to use that word journey, but it really is a bit of a journey or a narrative around what we've been doing. A big thing for us here at Kelvin Grove from our principal has been how can we raise our gaze? So looking up from curriculum documents and trying to make sure our students are ready for their digital futures. We want them to be influencers, not just being disrupted. So sharing a few strategies, some of the resources. I'd really love also through the chat window if you could all contribute any ideas as we go through as well, and there'll be a section at the end for some questions and answers. So I did want to try and quickly find out backgrounds. If you could just in that chat window write a couple of notes about yourself if you are a teacher, a primary or secondary teacher. Perhaps you're in a P to 12 college as I am, even if you're in the state or the private system or any other role that you hold.
Give everyone a second. Vet facilitator. 11 to 12. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, vet teacher. Thanks, Karen. Karen does a lot with our professional use as well. Others. Okay. Cool. So we've got a bricks. I know there's, I saw from the list some members that aren't necessarily teachers but work in this space as well, within this space. So that's all we've got at the moment.
Okay, so we'll move on, and I will, knowing that there's a couple of vet people also in the room as I am, I'll try and throw a few things in that area as well. Just a bit of an idea where you are from as well, just so I can contextualise a little bit. Obviously my experience is in Queensland and in the state school system.
Yeah, Townsville, so Queensland. I know there's some Victorians there. Get a mix. Queensland, I'll go Queensland. You wouldn't want to be in Sydney today.
Yeah. I don't know, it's blowing a gale here.
Oh, yeah, Sydney. Oh, sorry, mate. Brisbane. Yeah, so a lot of Queensland focus here, Sue, but looks like New South Wales, and something Victoria, Perth as well, which is great.
All right, excellent. So I have tried to broaden things a little bit for people from other areas as well.
Excellent.
And I guess wanting a little bit of background about how much people have already engaged with the new Foundation of Year 10 National Curriculum in Digital Technologies. And in Queensland, next year we're actually, well, so for Queensland, we're implementing that from 2020, but many schools are already engaging and starting to implement and assess. I think in other states it's 2019, or are already doing it. And here in Queensland, we're also implementing our new QCE curriculum, so a new digital solutions subject. For me personally, we're also looking at a Certificate 3 in both IDMT and Screen and Media, upgrading from Cert 2 qualifications. So just a little bit of information about your focus areas would be great.
Yeah. Anyone work in those areas? Is that one? So Andrew, you're running a Cert 2 and 3 in IDMT and been following the national curriculum. Great. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, 1 of 1. Yeah. Engage. So yeah, very low engagement from what I can see here with this new curriculum. So about average, but Andrew seems to be doing a bit of work in that space as well.
Excellent. And any experts with lots of experience, please feel welcome to add anything through the chat as well as we go through.
Great.
Okay, so I have got a little bit of an overview, not knowing how much engagement people had with the national curriculum at this stage. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. This is just pulled straight off the national curriculum website, and I've got links through everything so people will be able to go back later on and have a look. So for me, those key things, the computational systems and design thinking, I think that's really important. I think the problem solving approach also. So the next slide just talks about the strands, the knowledge and understanding and the processes and production skills, and unpacking those a little bit more. And again, I've got a link there if you haven't had a chance to have much of a look. I quite like the images that they're using to show how things sit inside each other. So I'm sure most of you are aware the digital technologies is one part of the whole technologies curriculum. And really how schools choose to deliver that is a school-based decision. Some will integrate across the curriculum, some will deliver it as a technologies curriculum in itself, others will offer specialised digital technologies and design and technologies, whether they're subjects or strands, depending on the year level. So as I said, that really is a school-based decision. There is some time around it, but again, it comes back to a school-based decision. And I know in Queensland, the state system, we have people like regional STEM champions, tech ambassadors, all sorts of support that we can bounce off our implementation. So that does come down to a school decision, or work within clusters, etc. So again, I'm just sharing my experience on some of the things that we've done here as a Prep to 12 State College. We are an independent public school as well, which gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of management. For me, a big focus in our college is starting with your why. So anytime we're looking at anything new, we need to talk about our why. And I got really excited when I saw the department's new strategic plan for Queensland, and I'm seeing things like Internet of Things and the gig economy and amount of data, and straight away I thought this is something I can really latch onto, so that when I'm trying to get support from our school leadership and our teams, while as teachers we're not always interested in the strategic stuff, in our school leadership teams, to be able to link through to these documents for me as a head of department is really important. So I've just highlighted a few things there that got me quite excited to actually see that implementing the national curriculum is a key priority in our strategic plan. That has given me a lot of leverage. Having that STEM focus, and I'll talk a little bit more about that now, and for us, the new state or new QCE curriculum. So for me, that strategic plan gave me a lot to get my teeth into as I'm talking to our leadership team about the importance of implementing this curriculum. And there's also so many strategic system and initiatives and projects around. So I've just thrown a few up from Queensland, and I know every other state has their priorities. There's also national initiatives and projects around. So in Queensland, we have the Coding Counts, we have the STEM STEM hub available, advancing education, etc. So a lot of new policies, initiatives in projects. The reason I say good to engage with those is that often there is funding. So for example, Queensland primary schools in the centre of that slide do actually get an allocation of funds from prep through to year 6. And a lot of teachers aren't aware that that funding has come into schools over the last, this year, and it is increasing each year. So sometimes being able to access those funds make things more easy to enable. For me, again, looking at your own school and what are some things that you can link into. So for me, again, new principal, his prep to pathways was really exciting for me because we are about providing a pathway for our students, hence our partnership with the ACS through Ross, and IT becoming such an important career for students, and that so many employees are going to be needed in the future. So it is a real true pathway for students to go into. Our mission statement was recently rewritten, futures focused, globally competent. So I can link to that now saying, well, in order for our students to be futures focused and globally competent, we do need to have our staff and students delivering a fantastic digital technologies curriculum program throughout the college. So again, you know, looking at what's in your school, trying to link to those strategic documents. And I know other systems, Catholic private systems, other states, as I said, will also have those. So I guess have a bit of a think at the moment, reflect a little bit, or are there other initiatives or projects, or where can you go to find out information? It may be through your principal, it may even be having a look at your state or other body that you're working with to see what initiatives and projects are there that you can tap into. So as I said, here in our college, raise your gaze is a term, again, another principal's term, our principal's term I latched onto. I really like that because I think too many times when we implement new curriculum, we get caught up at looking down at the curriculum document, thinking about how we're going to implement it, how we're going to assess it. Whereas for me, because of the rapid rate of change and digital disruptions and all of the things that we're hearing around us, it's really important to look up from those documents, look around. How does what you're teaching apply to industry? And even if you're teaching prep year 1, year 2, eventually your students are going to be engaging in industry, whether it's as an entrepreneur or in a part-time role or whatever they're doing, even as a consumer. So try and put that in that real world context. And I find sharing those real world stories is really engaging for students, or being able to show them digital content, digital videos of how digital technologies are transforming industries. They get quite excited about as well. So raising your gaze is also looking about what resources are already available in the system that you work in and the school or educational institution that you're working in, and what's available outside. Industry, universities, alumni, so ex-students, parents, carers, friends, who can you tap into rather than just looking at your curriculum document? Here in Queensland, and again, I'm sure other states are running similar things, we have a relatively new initiative, hashtag Queensland Tech Schools, that they want all schools to be signed up to by 2020. And that also incorporates the role of a tech ambassador. So I approached my principal to get some funding for some release time, which supports the implementation of the technologies curriculum with a huge focus on digital technologies curriculum. So that, again, that gives me a professional network to work within. I'm linked in with other people who have a passion in this area. I'm linked into people within the department who can give advice, pass on resources. We have a community, an online community that we can access and contribute to. So for me, a big part of that raising your gaze is to increase professional networks. So it might be in Queensland, we have Queensland Society of IT Educators is our professional group that teachers and institutions can become members of, and again in other states I know that they are there. In Queensland we have Advanced Queensland Community Digital Champions, again opening up a broader professional network. And one that I found really good is just through meetup.com, and looking at tech meetups. If you're wanting to find out about a new type of technology or connect in with professionals, there's so many meetups around based on tech, and a lot of them are startup entrepreneurs as well. So there's just a few ways to increase your professional network. Social media these days is probably the main way that I build my knowledge around things. So I've just grabbed some snapshots of some of my social media feeds, some groups that I'm in here in Queensland. There are a couple, like a Digital Solutions. The Digital Technologies Hub is a fantastic resource, so they have a Facebook presence as well. Some industry experts, Dr. Catherine Ball through her World of Drones, if you've got an interest in girls in ICT, which we know is a huge issue for the industry, Girls Flames, etc. So there's lots of different groups that you can get involved with on Facebook for sharing, as there are, this is just an example of Twitter fields, top left, never thought of using my Sphero robots for a Christmas tree, getting the students to program, some mazes, and again, I keep up with new technologies, seeing what's happening out in the real world. As I said, the students and even other staff members, trying to get staff members to engage, get blown away when you talk about how the Internet of Things is being used in agriculture, what drones are being used for already. So, you know, I do find Twitter is a great one as well, and also LinkedIn for connecting up with professionals. So again, just a few different people that I've linked up with. Often I don't even have to do the work. Someone else likes someone else's LinkedIn post, and then I'll often connect up with them. So for me, most of my professional learning, because I'm trying to stay on the cutting edge of digital technologies to prepare my students for the future and to support our staff to do so, I do find social media a great way to do so, and a quick way, and in the comfort of my own home, even better. For me, engaging with peak industry bodies, particularly working in the upper part of school and delivering vet qualifications, I'm fairly selective though. You want to go with the best. So we do have a partnership with the Australian Computer Society, and our students are members. We are also the gateway to industry school for manufacturing and engineering, but we have construction, and you'll see on the right hand side of that slide, in Queensland we have quite a few other areas that there are gateway to industry schools programs, aerospace, and other states will have these as well. And because industry can struggle to engage on a one-on-one basis with schools, by going through these peak bodies, it can help to streamline that process. And for schools, it's making sure that the people we're connecting with are leaders in their fields. So for me, see in orange there, you know, industry really needs schools and other educational institutions, particularly industries that rely on ICTs, like the ICT sector, manufacturing, engineering, particularly with the impact of digital disruptors. Digital technologies are now converging across all industries. So industry is really starting to need schools and other institutions as much as we need them, and particularly for vet qualifications, as we know where it's critical. For me, you can't be an expert in everything, and I a long time ago gave up in trying to do that. There's just so many areas within digital technologies. So it's about enabling other people or connecting other people to help drive some of these initiatives. In my experience, industry people do want to give back. They don't always have time though to do it one-on-one. I will often gather stories and video examples. So for example, Watkins Steel has transformed their business. They're not sacking people with bringing in new technologies. They're using 3D laser scanning and augmented reality to automate their traditional steel fabrication, cutting, etc. Industry. So showing examples of those, people are just blown away with how you can apply the curriculum and to give it almost a goalpost, I guess, to work towards. So we've all got, you know, ex-students, parents, carers, friends of friends, people that want to help. So once we start reaching out, I have found in my experience it's fairly easy to engage. For me, the startup community has been a big part of how we're trying to do things here. you know, we're hearing about the future of the workplace, so students will need to have entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial skills. Startups are really keen to connect, to get feedback on whatever they're developing. There are some that run programs, some co-working spaces that run programs, some entrepreneurs that run programs. So again, we don't need to be the experts. We can link in with some of these different startup co-working spaces and entrepreneurs. And I'm sure you're all aware, very exciting for me, River City Labs is now owned by the Australian Computer Society. So just have a bit of a think while I have a break from talking. Are there any startup communities available in your local area? I'm a Gladstone girl in central Queensland. They've got them there as well, so I know that they are everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. We're up there recently. Oh, not Gladstone, but Rockhampton. Gladstone's got one with Lewis up there. Elisa's in Rockhampton. I know there's one in Mackay, Townsville, pretty much everywhere up the coast, the startup spaces. And yeah, they're definitely out there.
And here's just a few that you may be aware of or I've been working with, and it's just opened my mind up. So, you know, Scott Miller from Bop Industries, Young Entrepreneur of the Year, is always willing to give time. He does run a program as well. Some of the robotics, came across Bondi Labs Cube at Fishburners, working in there with some students. They're now doing virtual reality health and safety training, and they've got a contract with Bunnings. So, you know, I think that's going to really transform education as well. So, if, you know, you're looking to the future and getting your students enabled in these skills and integrating some of this new technology into the curriculum, you know, you're really doing your students a favour for their futures. So other institutions, universities, I must admit, I probably don't do as much with universities, being more industry focused, but they are out there. They're in all areas, in all states. State Library of Queensland, a lot of people don't realise you can access the lynda.com subscription. So for me, if you can work with these organisations, these institutions, it could even just be a visit to get some ideas. So I guess, you know, think about, are you connected with your local library, university and or TAFE college? Often they are keen to work with schools. QUT here does amazing free activities based on STEM and use of digital technologies for students, as well as teacher professional development. So they're a great place to start. And for me, I am actually based in our college library. It falls in my head of department portfolio. School libraries are often looking at ways to transform. My librarian is now our key 3D printing person, who's leading other students and teachers through 3D printing across the curriculum, which is really exciting to see how far she's come in 18 months. So, you know, think about those types of institutions and resources, and again, libraries in your own school. So around building capabilities, again, for me, I guess I've done things a little bit differently. A lot of schools now have maker spaces, which I think are amazing. We run one here. We started with one where students and staff get the opportunity to tinker without the pressure of assessment. This year we extended that into having the maker space for traditional craft, but then having a digi space. So to actually have a wide range of digital technologies and tools, including those that are new and emerging, that students and staff could build their capabilities around, and how can they be embedded across the curriculum, particularly digital technologies. Obviously they fit in there quite nicely. I was able to get a $50,000 grant through Education Queensland Innovation Subsidies to get a Pepper and a Neo humanoid robot, which is going to transform some of the projects that we'll be able to do through our digital technologies. These things are out there in the world now. So for me, we find stuff gets thrown in cupboards and sometimes doesn't make its way out, but by having them in our library, people can access them. Everything's in glass, so people can see them. We did a Teacher Expo here on our last Student Free Day, and people were so excited. Now we've got classes coming up to engage with some of these technologies and teachers are thinking about how they can embed them. My advice is try to get some teacher release time to help with planning and team teaching, and then some funds for a teacher aide who helps with the management side of things. But you know, you can get by without that as well. That's where students are great. So just a few pictures there. We've got a large 3D powder printer in our library that's being used, for example, in hospitals they take 3D laser scans of burns victims' faces and then print out on the powder-based 3D printer the actual customised face mask, and then they make a burns mask out of that. So, you know, it's cutting edge technology that's out there being used. So I guess, you know, again, have a reflection. How much equipment do you have in your institution, your school, possibly even at home? And through our strategic committee, our digital pedagogy and technology strategic committee, this year, we actually started a process of digital capabilities conversations just used a shared class notebook, OneNote, to try to identify what's actually out there in those staff rooms, in different people's cupboards, in classrooms, and what type of expertise do we have around those different technologies and tools, just to, you know, I guess you don't want to have a lot of different people spending a lot of money on different things that then my robotics used to only get used 1 term, maybe 2 terms a year if I was lucky, and the rest of the time it was sitting there being underutilised. So the DigiSpace is making that equipment accessible to everybody. Again, it's, you know, limited funds. I am lucky to be in a very large school. We've got over 3,100 students, so with that comes additional resources. But if you're not in a school or an educational institution that is well funded, you can generally find grants, subsidies, even competition prizes. You may be able to get a volunteer in who can assist with sourcing grants, different opportunities. We've all, in our particularly primary schools, secondary schools, we've got kids who are mad keen about robotics and they want to do competitions. They're usually dragging their parents along with them. So sometimes we can engage some of those people. So again, if you wanted to just spend a couple of seconds thinking, reflecting on what grants, subsidies or other funds can you access? Again, you can't be an expert in everything. You can't do everything yourself. Something we've been really trying to do here is to build a team of volunteers. So as Ross constantly reminds our students, you can go to university, but if you don't have real world experience, you're going to struggle to get a job. So we have a number of past students, particularly those who are doing IT or IT engineering or even TAFE, who we encourage, and they do come back to work as volunteers or to help us with projects. Sometimes that extends to paid work, part-time paid work as well. Again, you can have parents, carers, grandparents who've worked in the industry or who have skills who are willing to come in. And it might only be a couple of hours after school one day, or you know, an hour after pickup. But what I find is that most people do want to give back to either their school or their student's school. You know, it might be demonstrations. They could even do up some how-to guides or videos, or some people even like to come in and help teachers in the classroom. So again, you know, are you tapping into the capacity for volunteers at your school or educational institution, and how could you be using them? Again, can't be an expert at everything. Another big focus here, and this is also putting students on their pathway into industry and making sure when they leave that they have actually built not only a skill set, but they've got a resume reflecting the things that they can do. So we know that in our schools, TAFEs, universities, we've got students who are so passionate about digital technologies. And if we can foster and harness that to the level of that, you know, that suits that particular student and extend them, I think we're really helping them for their future. So, you know, we we do try to identify students who have a skill or a passion. We get them to do the testing through the DigiSpace, through some of our classes as well, get them to help out. They might actually run through a project before we implement it with a class or a larger group of students, getting students to do screencasts, some how-to videos or other learning support materials that can help other students. So, you know, what are the tips and tricks? What were the problems that they ran into? I even have students who will do, you know, for example, an introductory Python activity, put together a Word document for me with some links that can get students started with Python. So, you know, they're more than happy. I guess being based in a library, we do have students who are more than happy to help out, but also, you know, students in other subjects, I'll put notices in or emails out, and we'll get students in. They're not always here all the time or for the whole year. They might come in and out, but as I said, it does help them also to build their skills and also their resume for post-school life. And through our DigiSpace, we actually encourage students to run activities for others. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot of what some of our experts do. So we have student experts who are part of our Tech Hub team. They love getting their ICT expert badge, even up to grade 10, grade 11, and we do it as a service. We include it in our service awards as well. End of last year, early this year, I had our experts created a heap of how-to videos for staff and students that we put up into ClickView. Encourage teachers in their classes to identify student experts to help teachers and other students out. I've talked about 3D printing experts with our library staff and our DigiSpace experts. We run a lot of events here, such as Open Day, way beyond today. So these students will come in and help. We're extending some students at the moment who are, you know, they've done Lego competitions. They were looking to go ahead into other technologies or had been playing around with Arduino. So we give them extension projects to do, some of them in the curriculum, some of extracurricular activities. We also do a sport robotics session on a Wednesday afternoon, and we're getting them to design and build robots for other students, particularly in the junior school, the lower phases of the junior school. And, you know, the next thing we try to deal with one new technology at a time. So the next thing we're trying to move to and to build our student and staff experts or early adopters around is virtual and augmented reality. So again, maybe just reflecting, do you have students that you could target as student experts? And probably I should add in there early adopting teachers as well. And that's where those digital conversations are fantastic. Sometimes you've got people who are really passionate about something that you're not even aware of. So I mentioned part of our building our capabilities. I've for many years tried to run different professional development or training sessions for staff on how to do particular things. I've, you know, had a lot of sessions where I've ended up having a great time on my own, where people are really keen to come, but life gets in the way and they don't always make it. So we've now, rather than doing, I mean, I'll still offer face-to-face sessions, but we've also put together a lot of how-to videos for both our staff and our students. And again, I get the students to create those. So, you know, one of the things that is a real challenge for teachers as they're building their skills is, well, you know, I need this student to do this. I'm not sure how to do it myself. I don't have the time to learn it. So if it's something fairly common or an ICT capability or something curriculum related, I always say to the teachers, well, if it's something that you teach all the time and you know the students are struggling with, well, let's screencast it or do a little how-to video. Put it up in ClickView. You can link to it from your e-learning space, whether it's a virtual classroom or a class notebook. And the students, you don't need to go through and show that skill all the time. The students can go off and find that out. And I have a accounting teacher who is the head of department, struggled having a lot of international students here at the college. She found if she did screencasts of how to use Excel to do particular accounting tasks, the students could go home, pause, rewind, and they came back and said, I just got that. That was so easy. And I'm sure many of you have heard of flipped learning approaches. Students engage with the content at home or doing an in-flip. So having that digital video content is great for that just-in-time purpose for both staff and students. One of the things we did do this year, and I'll race through this, identify with our Bring Your Own Device program, students were struggling with basic skills, so we did introduce a laptop license based on those how-to videos, set up a class notebook. The students could go in and do particular activities, and they had to grab screenshots and then get a peer to sign off of completion of tasks. Teachers only had 35 minutes with them, so it was a bit of a, there wasn't a lot of time for teachers to individually go through with students. One of the other things I really try to do is to get students and teachers really to engage in different competitions and challenges. So that really helps to build teacher networks. So for example, we had some students, they actually won their age group in the team for the Premier's coding competition, which we were blown away by what they do, but that's opened up a whole new network of people, both within the department and out in industry, that I can bounce things off or ask questions. I also like particularly things like Young ICT Explorers. Great to get ideas for projects that students can work on because it's aimed at different year levels. So it's great for developing student confidence and capabilities, but also teachers. And again, if you're aware of other competitions, I know there's plenty in other states, you know, make a note of it in the chat window if you'd like to. So I've just put a little bit of a summary there, I guess, as I was going through and influencing how we got this curriculum introduced. You know, they were sort of my building blocks, so to speak. So I just thought I'd throw that one in as well as a little bit of a snapshot of a few of the things that I've talked about, and I'll touch on more as we go through. One of the things I think it's really important when implementing the digital technologies curriculum is that people understand the difference between the ICT capabilities and the curriculum. So we're talking foundation to year 10 national curriculum here. A lot of people go, oh yes, you know, I've heard it before, we'll implement the digital technologies curriculum, we'll just drop it into science or we'll just drop it into maths. So having that conversation and actually sharing the curriculum with them, and we've been through this process here at the college, all of a sudden when people start looking at the digital technologies curriculum, they realise it's very, very different to ICT capabilities. So for me, it's been a great starting point by making sure people are aware in any conversation that I have, making sure that people are aware of the difference between them. So I'll run quickly through this, some of the sessions that I've done, and like all schools, the challenge is, and I'm sure all organisations, the challenge is to actually getting the access to teachers. And I talk about needing to give people both time and headspace, not, you know, putting it into existing meeting structures or into student-free days. If we ask people to do these things in their own time, they don't have the time or the headspace to engage the way that they need to at a really deep level. So for me, apart from that difference, but you know, firstly, that difference between capabilities and curriculum, raising awareness of the curriculum. We also at the college here have a scope and sequence around our ICT capabilities. So this is the prep to year 5. So teachers were able to take that away and help use that with their planning. So they weren't just planning for the curriculum, they were also planning for the ICT capabilities. And even people who are delivering in VET or other states and other institutions, you know, there's so many things in there. I mean, an industry could use that as well, you know, the critical skills that employees need to have. When I did sessions with teachers, I always tried to start with an unplugged before we got to using a digital tool, and always tried to raise awareness of the amazing resources that are out there. I actually believe we're at the point, particularly for primary school teachers, it's becoming a problem that we are overwhelmed with too many resources, which I know sounds strange. I wish I could say that about the year 11 and 12 digital solutions curriculum and the VET qualifications that I deliver. They're not as well resourced, but you know, from prep through to year 8, even year 9, there are so many resources out there. It's fantastic, and as really only half of it in the lower phases of learning need to be, or they can be unplugged as well, which is great. So the approach I always take is get people to engage with things, get them to reflect, to think about what they can adapt or adopt and map it to the curriculum and build it into their planning. So I won't go through all of, I'll just race through all of these. You'll have access to this later. Having different focus areas. We mainly use the Queensland curriculum into the classroom materials for this one, resources, and the digital technologies hub as well. So banded into learning phases of learning. You can't do, even with ICT capabilities, it's almost impossible to do a one-size-fits-all session with people these days. So people were able to work through these both usually worked in teams with other teachers of their year levels. Sometimes specialist teachers get forgotten while they're not implementing the curriculum. They do have a responsibility around ICT capabilities, and then some curriculum areas, other curriculum areas, always try and target and give them a takeaway as well. For me, talking particularly to primary schools, the most powerful strategy with the best results seem to be having a digital technology coach and mentor. So someone who's actually given time to work with other teachers, to assist with planning, to assist with implementation in the classroom, while the classroom teacher builds their capabilities and confidence. And if you, just again, a bit of a talking break for me and a thinking break for you, whether you're in a school or other area, I guess if you've got some other strategies that you have either heard of in other schools or other institutions, or that you have used that have been successful in terms of building teacher capabilities and confidence, could you just drop a note into the chat window, please?
Nothing's coming through. That's okay. It's all right. And also, if you've YICTE was awesome, Andrew. And look, if you've got specific questions you'd like to ask Sue, there is a Q&A section there, so please feel free to use that, and we'll get to those as we go through or at the end. That's all we got. YICTE.
Yep. So again, competitions are fantastic, and it doesn't always have to be the teacher driving those. It can be a parent or an external party, and the school and the teachers benefit from it. Okay, the next couple of slides are sharing some resources around the particularly the national curriculum implementation. So that building awareness. So I've just thrown a few on there. If people who are working in primary or high schools looking at implementing national curriculum, as I said, in Queensland by 2020, I believe in other states 2019. There's some links there if you're not aware of them. I shared this before. The ICT capabilities is critical, and that's across all curriculum areas. Need to be embedding those. So I've tried to separate these a little bit. Anyone who's looking at the national curriculum, there are some Australia-wide resources. Scoodle really now has, in Queensland we've had the Learning Place for years. It's not having as much development put into it as in previous years. Scoodle has taken on a lot of that role. I find the Digital Technologies Hub is absolutely fantastic. It's so many activities mapped to different year levels. That tends to be for myself and my digital technologies teachers, apart from the Queensland curriculum into the classroom, which we adapt or adopt as needed. I do find the Digital Technologies Hub is really the go-to place. They have all types of different activities. The Australian Coding Academy has now been around for a couple of years. They're now free. I'm not sure if that's just for Queensland students. It does integrate mostly Grok learning activity. So I haven't actually put the Grok Learning link in there. But some of the curriculum writers for the national curriculum have been involved in Grok Learning as well. So that's another good place to start, or as I said, through the Australian Coding Academy. Here in Queensland, Department of Education, we also have our Queensland Coding Academy, which integrates a lot of Grok activities for free, and there is a student element of that, so that's going in through the Learning Place. So any state school teachers, I have put those links in there, and QCAA for private schools, there's a fair bit there as well. Some of the other things that are available, the Adelaide CSER MOOC has some great resources. They do both online and face-to-face professional development around the national curriculum. They have a lending library, which is fantastic. Something that I'd love to do in the future is to be able to outreach to other schools and organisations. And I guess it's a bit like the State Library in Queensland are doing now with their hardware tools, you know, hammers, etc. You can actually go along and borrow a lawnmower from the State Library, which I think is pretty amazing. Digital Technologies Victoria has some great resources there as well, and I'm sure every other state through there, because digital technologies and the national curriculum has become such a priority, and it's even having economic impact now and will have in the future. Every state is really embracing either as digital technologies or as STEM curriculum, and there's lots of resources around, which is fantastic. As I said, lots of startups, many businesses are actually offering either teacher professional development or activities with students. So I've listed a couple there, and there's a few more back on those social media and startup slides. Some of the ones that we also use, BBC Bitesize UK, from what I understand, has been delivering digital technologies national curriculum for a very, very long time, and they have some great resources. The GLC Learn Free is great. We use that particularly around ICT capabilities or laying a foundation for some of our VET qualifications if students don't really come in with too much prior knowledge around computer equipment, digital technologies. Some of the Hour of Code is great, and I know that week 10, the last week for us, which is I think the second week in December, is the Hour of Code. It's the Computer Science Week, I think it's called. And Hour of Code through code.org are heavily involved in that. And I'm sure most people have heard of Khan Academy as well. We, like most schools, are now trying to go to more web-based development environments and resourcing. And all of these, you know, I haven't got too much into development environments in this instance, but you know, anything that you can use that is web-based takes away the need to have to install apps, etc. Just briefly though, I guess, you know, we do have almost 50% of our students in our BYO bring an Apple program. So I know Apple laptop, sorry, so, you know, Swift, and for the younger ones, Swift Playground now. I think they're also available on apps, Python, but, you know, it's looking at the curriculum and making sure that the type of language that you're using is appropriate. So more block-based and visual for the younger grades through to more text-based by the time they're getting up through middle and senior school. Happy to talk more about those on another occasion if anyone is looking at that type of detail. If anyone does have any other resources, please drop those into the chat window. It's great to be able to share.
Yeah, Code Academy.
Yes,
Aaron came in Code Academy, and Andrew said he's in a PTech school and working in the local industry, hospital, and with some industry, and JCU, which is a uni up in Townsville there, and he's building an integrated Cert 4. The aim is to extend traditional trades, because they're a traditional trade school, into technology world, so drones, robotics, automation. Andrew, love to talk how we can... Yes,
I need to talk to, I'd love to talk to you, Andrew, more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Andrew, I'll get you to reach out if you can. I'll give you my email address, and then I can pass that on to Sue. So that's some great learning. Keep going, Sue. Sorry to interrupt.
And really, I guess just a couple of last thoughts around building confidence, capability, implementing the curriculum. I think we have to be prepared not to be the expert or to be the master. We are more the facilitator. These days, I'm always learning with my students and modelling how to fail to learn. That's so critical. I use the analogy of a baby learning to walk with my digital technology students, and you can see that they get that. You know, so it's not about having everything perfect the first time. As I mentioned before, I try to test things first with individual students or through the Digi space. I think it's really important to consider your pedagogical approach and link into the frameworks where a gradual release of responsibility. School, so the I do, we do together, etc. So, you know, really be thinking about that pedagogical approach. Collaboration is so important though, building important skills for industry, discovery, project-based, but definitely needs to be problem solving. About problem solving, and as I say, it's not about the digital devices, and you do need to consider what you're going to use and how you'll choose them. And I know the Department of Education has a STEM resource selection tool that's quite useful. For me, differentiation is really critical to keep the students engaged. We have students coming through, and this is through our junior school as well, they've never done anything around digital technologies, coding, robotics, never touched, might have touched an iPad maybe, through to students who probably know more than I ever will already. So I always take that approach, identifying who are the beginners, the early adopters and the experts. And I do that when building staff capability as well. I try to look at digital tools that offer or support differentiation. So the Sphero EDU app, they can start off with block code. They can start to look by the, you know, more experienced can look at JavaScript. They can then program in JavaScript. So try and have something that meets all learners wherever they are. One thing, being a high school teacher, I think is a bit of a concern for me. We need to make sure in primary schools we are extending students, but we don't turn them off. We often get students through going, oh, I can do all that. I don't want to do digital technologies. But in fact, they may only know a small part. And it really hit home when I went to the new curriculum. I went to a workshop for teachers, and then I went off to a tech ambassadors forum, and they were talking about the same projects for both. So primary school teachers, high school teachers. And I'm thinking, geez, what are we, it's a bit like university. So if you're doing all of this in high schools, what are we going to teach the students in university? So for me, a way to get around that is that, and I've got that as the last point, a bit of a scope and sequence with feeder schools to get some continuity through, and the high school teachers know what the junior school teachers or primary school teachers can already do. And the other point I've got in there is about building in that entrepreneurship. I really think that that's important. We have some students working in at Fishburners on digital solution startup business concepts. They get mentored, but it's going to be really critical for students to have that entrepreneurial mindset or intrapreneurial mindset once they leave school or whatever other pathway they're going through. That's it from me. I'm sorry I took a couple more minutes then than I hoped to. Hopefully I've covered quite a few things that have been quite useful. As I said, it's my journey. I don't consider myself to be an expert, but I am lucky enough to work P12 and have some vet and been in the game for a little while, so happy to share my story.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. And just use the Q&A to send any questions through. And look, one thing that's always stood out to me about you, Sue, is your innovative approach. And I think of the first conversation we had, we knew there was an opportunity to kind of work together. And just to some of your key points there, look, I know if there's any industry people out there right now, we're looking at how we can connect some of Sue's students with work experience. So if you do have opportunities out there, please reach out to me. I did put my email on the chat there. Sue, are you happy to share your PowerPoint with this group?
Yep, okay. And my email address is there as well.
Great, we'll go out to that later. And look, just to touch on that, so ACS, I know they're rolling out in Victoria a PD program. We've got Catherine on the line that's been watching, but she's working quite closely with the primary sector down there to see what ACS can do. I know that's got some runs on the board. Some of the areas that we're working here at locally is really to strengthen that industry education collaboration. there is a big gap, and like Sue's mentioned a couple of times, that industry experience is absolutely critical when you're getting out of the education sector. The three key areas we've partnered with Kelvin Grove are around core skills, that soft skill development, the industry engagement and the career readiness. It's about getting the students to really understand the full potential of their skills and to give them insights into the developments of the industry and what that might mean in 5 years when they're getting out of university or out of external studies, and how they can start to think in that way. The other area too is we need to create deeper industry pathways, and this is including the on-the-job training. And I think, Sue, you're doing phenomenal work to kind of get runs on the board with that. The other is the IT industry and changing perceptions to parents. So we're doing quite a bit to support Sue in that regard, and how we can, you know, educate the parents just as much as the students on technology, and where that's going. Let me just check if they've got any questions there. Any questions for Sue just before we sign off? No. And so what are your concerns or are you concerned in regards to the inconsistency of the curriculum development? You look like you've done so much work, and congratulations in the preparation and the consideration. How do you feel the consistency of this is going to roll out nationally?
I think given the amount of resourcing, particularly through, you know, Australian Coding Academy, through the Digital Technologies Hub in particular, if people are using the resources that are provided and adopting and adapting, I think it will be fairly consistent. I guess, you know, that's the approach that we've taken with our teachers. You don't need to reinvent wheels, particularly when you're starting out. All of this is there for you to engage with. So for me, that's probably not a real concern of mine. I mean, teachers, even if they're not, I guess even if they're not still building capacity around a particular curriculum, they're still curriculum experts, if you know what I mean. Like, they know how to approach curriculum and, you know how to do their jobs. And if they're accessing those resources provided by their state body or some of these other groups, then I think it will be fairly consistent. For me, in our college, it's, you know, I even talk about way beyond STEM, way beyond STEAM. You know, I guess individual schools will always push the boundaries. I know we've got a lot of local feeder schools who are really pushing, primary schools are really pushing boundaries, and I'm thinking, oh, those students, when they get here, we're going to have to, you know, what are we going to teach them to extend them further? But at the same time, that's fantastic. That's, you know, it's exactly what we need to do for students who are on that pathway.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, I mean, this will consistently evolve, this curriculum, with the changes of technology, as you've kind of mentioned to me previously, and that will allow for kind of the I suppose, you know, unknown around the industry and where things are going, and connecting, I suppose, you know, growing the skill sets with the teachers and adapting that curriculum with that pace of change depending on what technology is mainstream or being utilised, will really impact, I suppose, future conversations in this area.
Yeah, and I think it will be a bigger issue for senior schools. Particularly in Queensland, the new Year 11 and 12 digital solutions curriculum, they don't, at this point in time, and maybe it will come, but we're implementing next year, don't have the same resource base that the national curriculum has. So there may be, you know, for me, there's more chance of inconsistencies, particularly, you know, other syllabus documents are very prescribed and high definition, but we have 4 industry contexts that we can choose. So even though we're delivering the same curriculum, it's through a different context, so that may lead to inconsistencies across secondary schools. Not sure yet.
Yeah, we'll have to see how we go, won't we? Kick it off here and we'll see. But look, no questions come through, but lots of thanks from the audience there, Sue, and I think you've really opened your eyes. I to be honest, didn't realise how much work you'd put into this. I knew it was a lot of work, but going through this today has really opened my eyes on the significant work you've done and you know, where you're going with this, and congratulations. And look, thanks, Andrew said thanks again, and look, thanks for the audience for tuning in today. We will do some more content in this space. We do think it's important with the industry struggling to get skills. This pipeline comes into the education sector in high school first and foremost, I think. And they're the ones we can have an immediate impact to these students and can contribute to the growth of the industry quite quickly. So look, well done, Sue. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. See you later. Bye-bye.